Do you guys remember the Tottenham Hotspur edition of All or Nothing? Well, it's back. Actually, let me fix that. Yep, much better now. One team has caught my eye in this chaotic season of the Premier League. Any guess would be valid, but Tottenham Hotspur is having a very interesting season, going against their usual performances. Take a good look at this table for me. You cannot tell me this is normal. But how did they come to be? And what has changed from last season? It's crazy to think that Spurs are winners of literally anything. When it was time for Spurs to take action, they didn't, and when they did, it was too late.
But Tottenham is the history of the Tottenham.
We go way back to August 13th, 2025, where Spurs just won the Europa League and life was at its peak. For Spurs fans, of course. They were about to add to their happiness by getting the opportunity to win the Super Cup, possibly being the first Europa League team to win since Atletico Madrid in 2019. Surprisingly, it was going well, and Mickey van de Ven and Christian Romero scored to put them in the lead against a PSG side that bent Inter Milan over, beating them 5-0, breaking the record for the largest score margin in a Champions League final. But if you were around the block before, you would know that Spurs and clutching up when it matters most is like oil and water. I know I'm already contradicting myself, but anyone can win that Europa League final. Back to the point, Kang-in Lee would score a goal to get the Parisians back in the game before Gonzalo Ramos ties it up in the 4th minute of added time to take it to penalties. I'm gonna cut to the chase. Despite it being close, PSG won. Now, did I expect PSG to win? Yes, but I'm not gonna act like I didn't change my mind when Spurs went 2-0 up. How did they mess this one up? This was also new manager Thomas Frank's first competitive game in charge, and to be honest, he didn't even do that bad of a job. I still don't know why their board sacked Ange Postecoglou. He won you your first trophy in 17 years and that is how you repay him? Wow, what an evil world we live in. This is the equivalent of a prince from the Middle East marrying a dumb blonde supermodel with a BBL. Like, of course she's gonna divorce you and take half your stuff. You think she actually likes you? Get real, man. Maybe Ange took a Starburst from Daniel Levy's drawer without asking him first. Then by all means, it makes total sense.
It's over, it's over, it's over. We have just held 3 at home to Crystal Meth FC and our Premier League chances are dead and gone like T.I. and Justin Timberlake, fam.
You know what? That's whatever though, because it was time to build their team. The past is the past, I guess. Kevin Denso was added to reinforce the defense. Matheus Tel and João Palhinha on loan from Bayern Munich. Mohamed Kudus from West Ham after a phenomenal season for 64 million euros. 18-year-old Luka Vuskovic from Hajduk Split. And Xavi Simons from RB Leipzig for 70 million euros. Leaving the club would be legend Heung-min Son as he decides his time is up and flies over to sunny LA. It may just be me, but I feel like without him, they would probably be relegated, especially without Harry Kane and nobody else to really take that leadership role. Pierre-Emile Højbjerg also departs for Marseille, where he knows he made the right decision as his new team are actually fighting for Europe. Unlike Spurs now. The season would start and guess what? It was actually going pretty good for them. A 3-0 win against Burnley and a 2-0 win against Man City away had me thinking they were going to lock in this season and finish top 6. But then, all good things do come to an end, and they lose their first game 1-0 to Bournemouth. This is where they hit the first bump of the season. They aren't even bad, so this one was just more of the understandable ones. But how will you draw against Brighton and drop points to a 20th place Wolves at home? To add insult to injury, how are you going to drop points to a Norwegian side in Bodo Glimt? I know they just made the round of 16 somehow, but this was way before they were locked in like that. Or maybe they always were, I don't know. But yeah, they get 3 points against Leeds but lose to Aston Villa after. Yeah, I think Aston Villa deserves to be in the Big Six instead of Spurs. They would drop points against Monaco in the Champions League somehow, someway. And they would actually go on to thrash Everton somehow when I had both James Tarkowski and Jordan Pickford in my FPL team. Isn't that funny how that works? Again, more bumpy patches in the road for Tottenham. They'd go on and lose to Newcastle in the Carabao Cup in a game where the Magpies dominated, then lose to Chelsea and tie to Man United. But it only gets worse as they would get humiliated by their North London counterparts Arsenal in a 4-1 loss, where their main transfer target in Eberechi Eze would net a hat-trick past them. Genuinely, I think Eze could win the Ballon d'Or if he played against Spurs every week. That result would drop them down to 9th place. A loss to Fulham and a PTSD-inducing defeat to PSG in the Champions League phase would shatter their spirits of winning literally anything. How will you use the same 5-3-2 tactics when it didn't work the previous time you played them? And of course, they would take the lead before they lose it later on. Typical Spurs. In their draw against 12th place Newcastle, Christian Romero would go on and score 2 with 1 in the dying minute. Despite all the red cards he's been getting, he is one of their top scorers and probably their best player. Igor Tudor, if you're watching this, which you probably aren't, keep him and let him get as many red cards as he wants, because at the end of the day, he will keep you from getting relegated. The next huge shock was when they lost 3-0 to a Nottingham Forest side that were 16th and were on their 3rd manager of the season to conclude their lowlights of 2025. It is now the new year and the start of the transfer window, so to reinforce their team, they brought in Conor Gallagher on loan from Atletico Madrid and left back Sousa from Santos. Both were doing okay so far beforehand, which is better than whatever was shown in August to December, but it looks like this year isn't any better. A draw to Brentford, who have been good, but just a 0-0? Like, really? A draw to Sunderland, a very defensively good team that hasn't lost a game at home, and it would look like Spurs have found their footing and at least aren't losing anymore. Maybe this could be their way back into the European spots. But their next 3 opponents would be Bournemouth, Aston Villa, and West Ham. They lost the first 2, albeit these are very good teams, but at least they can get 3 points against a West Ham side that is probably going to get relegated by April, right? Right?
Hey y'all, come look at this.
Despite that very humiliating shortcoming, it was time to focus on the Champions League, where they surprisingly beat Dortmund. Transforming back into the below average Spurs now, they would draw against another relegation bound team in Burnley, 63% possession and double Burnley shots, and only a draw? Why am I even surprised anymore at this point? Okay, but you have to tell me how Manchester City keep losing or drawing against Spurs. Spurs would rematch against a rejuvenated Manchester United, losing 2-0, which is another team I should talk about, for the right reasons of course this time. And on match day 26, you know what, let's play a game. This is a multiple choice. Against an underperforming Newcastle United that took only 1 point from a possible 15, did they A, win, B, draw, or C, lose? Okay, time's up, they lost. And that was enough to get Thomas Frank the sack. It really took the board this long to make that decision. Despite his success at Brentford, it is very clear that these are 2 teams with different playing styles, and he just tried to force the Spurs team to adapt to his Brentford days. And it is also because of him, Spurs have not won a single game this year in the Premier League to this day. So, in comes manager Igor Tudor to try and use new tactics, as he's coached teams that have seen better days than this car crash of a team. But the downside is that he's failed to win his last 8 games for Juventus in all competitions, so there's a chance that he might carry that down to London. And I was right, as they would get destroyed 4-1 by Arsenal in the North London derby. I mean, this isn't really a shock to anyone, and it isn't fair to judge Tudor off that game alone. But the good news is that he's reportedly implementing various methods to get the team back into shape, and to regain their fitness and desire. But it has to be really soon, as they are only 4 points above the relegation zone after suffering a 2-1 loss to Fulham, and the way things are going, if they lose their next 2 games and Burnley win their next games, relegation is actually a possibility. Tudor goes 0 for 3 in wins, losing 3-1 at home. I don't even blame the fans for leaving at halftime. They had the lead, sure, but they just had to give it up and get a red card in the process. In goes one defender and out goes the other, I guess. Without Mickey van de Ven's pace, that defense is gone, and it showed. So here we are now, just 1 point off relegation and sat with the 2nd worst home record, standing inferior to the likes of Wolves and West Ham. Thomas Frank took away their attacking spark that they had under Ange Postecoglou, as 2 of your top 3 scorers are center backs. Whenever they would try and press, they would always get counterattacked, proving how unfit the team really is. It feels all too safe, just like Frank's Brentford. There's no progressive play from the midfield as they've always passed sideways, and it especially doesn't help when the defense is unstable. A big example, Rodrigo Bentancur last season had forward passes in the 85th percentile compared to the 13th this season. It also doesn't exactly help when they can't maintain leads or avoid conceding one level, or in some cases relying on a last minute winner to get them a point. You can never go into a match saying, yes, Tottenham will win with 100% certainty, unlike previous seasons. Thankfully, I am not a betting man, not yet at least. You also got a bunch of upcoming players like Lucas Bergvall, Archie Gray, and Mathis Tel not getting a whole lot of experience with more experienced players, but also playing alongside other upcoming players, which isn't exactly the best for their development. Speaking about the squad itself, everyone is merely a shell of themselves from last season. Guglielmo Vicario is not a good example of the modern day goalkeeper. He can't distribute. The only thing he can get right is shot stopping, but not even that is 100% locked in, as he does give up some, pretty easy goals. Overall, not the most reliable in the net. As far as defense goes, it doesn't exactly help that Radu Draguzin is still so buns, and Christian Romero can't do anything but shoot. But he does have 4 goals. Mickey Van de Ven is probably the only highlight here. I kind of take back what I said about Romero being their best player. It's probably going to be Van de Ven, as his pace makes up for anything really, and he'll probably leave in the summer, as if Spurs do get relegated, he's going to become so much cheaper on the market. Everyone else is below average to average, and that is not what you need right now in dire times such as this current moment. Are we also going to ignore the fact that Pedro Porro is their only right back? There is just absolutely no depth. Maybe sell one of those center backs for an exciting wing back. The midfield, I think, still has time to develop, but they don't mesh together well. Pape Matar Sarr does his job whenever he's on. I mean, he just kind of exists. Same with João Palhinha, and Conor Gallagher is not having a good time, let's just say, despite starting most of the games. To be fair, those 3 will be as good as it gets, because while everyone else is injured, their only available attacking midfielder, Xavi Simons, is stinking it up, as he's only got 1 goal in 22 Premier League games. 70 million euros, by the way. RB Leipzig robbed these guys. They probably could have got like 30 million more for him.
Only problem you're gonna have is that you didn't buy more. Sound fair enough?
Shit, my wife might divorce me, but yeah, let's do it.
For Lucas Bergvall and Archie Gray, they are still quite young, 20 and 19 respectively, so I can only give them some slack. And, Archie Gray's actually been pretty good. Keep these guys, as they'll come good and learn from their older teammates of not what to do. Finishing on attack now, there are no wingers that are fit, and that involves playing some of their center forwards out of position. It's crazy how when you play people in their primary position, that they tend to do better. Again, I mentioned Mohamed Kudus, and he was having a good start to the season before his hamstring injury that basically ruled him out for the season. I don't think when he returns it's going to be much help. I guess you can't really set the bar high for the attack, as they most likely don't get the ball as much as they would like. So Richarlison, as much as we like to rip on him for being offside a lot, he's been doing okay for himself as the club's top scorer. And something needs to change about Mathis Tel, as he can have a good game, get himself a goal, and then tank the next few games. Finally, Randall Kolo Muani just kind of exists. He doesn't do a whole lot, and he probably should head back to PSG or wherever he came from. Anybody that got loaned here just walked into a dumpster fire. Overall, it doesn't help that this team is riddled with injuries, and the management isn't exactly all there in the head either. I'm talking about Thomas Frank, for example. He should have been gone by like Christmas, I'm not gonna lie. And finally, we all know about how absolutely trash they are in the Prem. Yeah, but how do these guys manage to get 4th in the Champions League? Above the likes of Real Madrid, Barcelona, and Manchester City. To be fair, they had a pretty easy line of games, but you're telling me you can beat Dortmund, who's 2nd in the Bundesliga, but you can't beat 19th place West Ham? Something tells me this team has their priorities very upside down. Their only hard game was PSG, but of course you're going to lose to them though. Now they're going to play Atletico Madrid in the round of 16, where their chances are looking slim to none in advancing. want to know what the crazy thing is that it's like deja vu. Last season, they were in an identical position domestically, but they shifted to this mentality of Europa League or bust. And the gamble paid off, winning the team that trophy. So maybe, just maybe, even if they get relegated, they and all of their fans are going to sleep happy if they win the Champions League. But snap back to reality for a second. Do we really think that's going to happen? The Champions League levels above the Europa League, but after the season finishes, where do they go from here? We all know the answer, that being get more experienced players, replace those who might be on their way out, and get another right back so Archie Gray doesn't have to play there anymore. Also have a roster of managers lined up. I give it 3 to 4 months before Igor Tudor is sacked or leaves North London on his own. I hear this talk about Maurizio Pochettino coming back, but I think that's impossible, as he is probably not keen on the fact that his mighty Spurs are playing championship footy next season. Like anybody else, he'd rather stuff his face with Burger King and Dunkin' Donuts in the States than manage that dumpster fire. To really bolster the defense, I say bring back Toby Alderweireld. Oh, never mind. But that is what 5 years of Spurs does to a man. Whoever lives with a Spurs fan, please allow them at the end of the season to smash their TVs as hard as possible and buy them a new one. This is the only probable cause for ever smashing a TV over sports. They would be the second Big Six team to have been relegated in the Premier League era, besides Man City back in the good old days, before we had that Jeff Bezos money. Their next fixtures don't seem to do them any justice, against Liverpool away, Forest at home, and Sunderland away. They're going to get 1 point at most here, and I don't even know if they're going to beat Wolves away when they cross that bridge, because all of the relegation teams after Christmas decide to have a glow up. And look, not everybody's a loser here. I can think of one man that benefited from all of this happening, and you want to guess who that is? Yeah, that's right. It's Eberechi Eze. He was so close to joining Spurs, but then, Arsenal's like, nah, come to us instead. And let's just say this. Eze is not playing for Spurs, and he is actually fighting for a league title instead of relegation. So, yeah, good job, man. Anyways, that is going to do it for the video. Let me know what you guys think. Is Spurs going to get relegated, or am I overreacting? Hopefully, you're not like the Arsenal fans in 2 videos ago, where I think like a lot of them like hate me now. Make sure you like, subscribe, go follow my TikTok, link is in the description, and I will catch you guys all later. So yeah, have a good day and peace.